Rob, what is our fourth main topic today?
Well, John, our fourth main topic comes to us from Sam Brown. Hey, John and Rob, I know we've been following the IATSE strike vote with a watchful eye, so I was wondering if you saw that according to Deadline, they overwhelmingly voted in favor of striking. While this doesn't mean a strike is happening yet, it means they're prepared to at any point. What does this mean for studios, as they must be quaking in their boots? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, John, for those of you who might not know, of course, IATSE is the union that covers everybody that works on the production side of making a film, both when you are making the film, shooting it, and in post-production. And obviously, everybody works really long hours. A standard workday is 12 hours, which means it's really 14 or 15 hours with commuting time and when you have to get up. And it's been a long time coming, I think, that these things have been changed. And obviously, the big problem here is that if you have shorter work days, it's going to take longer to shoot a movie, which could add costs, which is why the producers aren't so keen on it. But the thing is, with our new streaming universe, the money people used to make has changed. And so, unfortunately, the working conditions and the amount of money the money's changing, but the working conditions aren't. This is something that has to happen. And for IATSE, they've now authorized a vote by a wildly overwhelming majority. It gives them even that much more bargaining position at the table when they are negotiating with the producers. Variety tells us the AMPTP, those are the producers basically, remains committed to reaching an agreement that will keep the industry working, the group said in a statement. We deeply value our IATSE crew members and are committed to working with them to avoid shutting down the industry at such a pivotal time, particularly since the industry is still recovering from the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. A deal can be made at the bargaining table, but it will require both parties working together in good faith with a willingness to compromise and explore new solutions to resolve the open issues. Variety says this. But John, from my perspective, I think this needs to happen. And what IATSE has done is they've given themselves more armor. So when they go sit down at the bargaining table with the producers, they're one phone call away, one keystroke, one push that button on a smartphone away for calling a strike. And they've never been in a better bargaining position. So I think it's good that they've called for a strike.
Well, I mean, and it should be made clear to everybody, because the person who wrote this in put it best. They did not vote to strike. Like, a strike is not on. I started getting a lot of messages from people who misunderstood what's going on. They thought, oh, they're on strike now. No, what has happened is that the union members have voted to give the power to call a strike to their president. So now, while the president is at the bargaining table, he, like you said, Rob, he is now one phone call away from saying, boom, we're on strike. They've given him that power to do. Now, Rob, our emailer said, the producers must be shaking in their boots. They are, but I'll tell you who else is shaking their boots. The union is shaking. Everybody's shaking in their boots. Nobody wants a strike. Do you think that IATSE wants to strike? Of course they don't want to. They're in a position where they feel they need to. Do you think the producers want a strike? Obviously not. They don't want a strike. So this is a situation where nobody is happy, but everybody, including and especially IATSE here, is in a position where they are putting themselves in a position where they're not happy because they feel they absolutely must. They need to change the conditions. They need to be able to make a living wage. They need to not have to work themselves to death just to keep their jobs and all that kind of stuff. This has to change. Now, at the same time, if you're the producers, you have to make sure that you're still doing business in a way that you're not losing money doing business. If it's cheaper for you just not to make the movies than it is to make the movies, then you're just not going to make the movies. And I get that. So the producers want to make sure they safeguard that they have a working business model. I appreciate that, Rob. I respect that. You got to make sure, like, if you're running a fruit stand that makes $3,000 a month, you can't pay your guy $2,900 a month. You're going to lose money. You're going to go out of business. I get it. They're trying to make something workable for them. But IATSE at the same time is like, we appreciate that too, but you can't work us to death in order for you to get that. You can't underpay us to a barely livable, if not even livable wage. You got to make it happen. No one wants a strike. No one does. It's not like IATSE now is going, ha ha, yes, now we get to strike. They don't want to. They feel they need to, or they need to have the power, and they need to have their, their trigger, their finger on the trigger, ready to pull it. And the producers have to know they're serious to do it. It'll suck, it'll hurt, but it's what they need to do. And I think the producers understand that. And Rob, I've said from day one, what I believe is going to happen here, and I still believe it, and maybe I'm just being overly optimistic, but what I believe is going to happen here is I believe they would vote to authorize the strike, and they have, and they should. But what I think will happen here is now, look, everybody knows everybody's serious. And I think all of them know a shutdown right now would be catastrophic for everyone. And nobody wants that. And I think both parties are going to have their feet to the fire, and both parties are going to want to get a deal done. And there are certain things that are going to be absolute necessities for IATSE to get. There are going to be some things that they'd like to get that maybe aren't absolute necessaries. There's going to be the same thing from the producers. I got to believe, Rob, that everybody knows a shutdown is bad for everybody, and that cooler heads will prevail, and they will make this deal happen. And I think this move by IATSE, this very smart move by the union, just puts them in a better position to show that, yes, hey, listen, guys, we're at a very, very dangerous spot right now. And you need to know how serious we are, that we're willing to go over the cliff, because not going over the cliff right now is even worse than going over the cliff for us. So we got to change the circumstances. Rob, so I am actually optimistic that this bold move by the IATSE is going to help an actual deal get made before a strike needs to be called. But Rob, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. What do you think? Do you think they're too far apart? Do you think a strike is inevitable? Do you think a deal will get done? What do you think this turns out to be?
Well, I think that obviously our society has been going through a lot of changes over the last decade. And I think the entertainment business sometimes is a little slow on the uptake. And conditions. Look, I've been both a producer and a grunt on a film set. I understand why this has to happen. And on one hand, it's going to make independent productions a little more difficult if we're going to limit production to 10-hour days. But I also believe that kind of thing has to happen. There's been, if even one person gets hurt driving home weary and tired from a film set after a too long day, that's one person too many. And I think that this kind of thing needs to be pulled back. What other business expects a normal day to last 12 hours? And I think that it's something that has to change, man.
Or if you got to keep it at 12 hours, then compensate your workers like they're working 12 hours and 13 hours and 14 hours and 15 hours. Compensate them like they're missing out on their time with their family. Compensate them that they're missing out on their recovery time and their rest time. So you got to do one or the other, Rob. Like, okay, keep the compensation where it is, but we're going to shorten your work days. We're going to make life a little bit better. But okay, we're asking you to do a hell of a lot, so we're going to pay you like we're asking you to do a hell of a lot. So it's got to be one or the other. They got to come to some kind of resolution on this. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this? I personally think this was the right move for the union, and I'm optimistic that I personally feel this is actually going to ultimately lead to a deal getting done and they will avoid a strike. I hope, and I think everybody hopes. What do you guys think is going to happen? Jump on down into the comment section below and leave us your thoughts.